Hi, everybody. Good afternoon, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Prarthana Gururaj. I'm a physical therapist here at Mercer-Bucks Orthopedics. If you are someone who is working from home, or if you're doing schoolwork from home during this pandemic, and you notice yourself having neck or back pain, if you're having pain radiating down your arms or your legs, well, then this webinar is certainly something that can help you. Today, we're going to learn how you can set up an ergonomically smart computer study or workstation. So a little bit of history as to how we kind of decided and came up with this topic. So there it goes, wait. So in March this year, when the pandemic hit us, many people were told to pick up their laptops, start to work from home, and a plan of return would come up sometime in the future. Kids were told that schools were going to go virtual, and they got busy trying to study off of their study desks at home. And it was very interesting for us as PTs in our PT department to see an increase in patients who said that their neck and arm pain was sort of like, oh, by the way, I started to work from home now and I'm working off of my dining table. It doesn't feel as good as my work desk felt when I was working from my office. So we decided that this may be the perfect time to put together something to help people get comfortable working from home or studying from home. So I have a little pictorial quiz for everybody. Let me know if you think either you or your kids are in any of these postures or positions when you're studying or when you're working. And some of this might look familiar right now. If not this, then do you find yourself in any of these positions? Also not necessarily very uncommon anymore when you're having to work from different parts of your home. So the best thing we can do, since we have to accommodate for this new environment we're working in, is understand where should we be posture-wise, what's normal, what's healthy, what are we doing and how are we changing that, and then we can put together a plan to get that ideal, perfect way of sitting and working and doing other things. So this is a little bit of a description on what our healthy posture should look like. So the picture on the left is a picture of our normal posture. Our spine is not one straight line. It comprises of alternating C curves. The neck and the low back have a concavity to the outside, and we call them a lordosis, whereas the mid back is convex to the outside and is called a kyphosis. The simple rule to remember: if you can maintain these normal natural curves of your spine, you're more likely to be problem-free. Now, when we look at the picture on the right side, this seems to be like someone who is intensely looking at his screen, is very focused on a meeting or talking to somebody on the other side of his computer or on his smartphone. And you can see how we as human beings, we're notorious for protracting our neck forward. And as we protract our neck forward to focus on the screen or even when doing things, we lose that normal natural C curve of the neck. And there is a very simple rule of thumb: where the neck goes, the shoulders go with it. Where the shoulders go, the upper back goes with it. So as your neck protrudes forward and you lose the C curve of the neck, you find the shoulders are now slouching. And as the shoulders slouch, the upper back rounds with it. And now you have a bigger kyphosis of the mid back. When that happens, our low back automatically starts to flatten out. So now another simple rule to remember about when we're moving our joints, regardless of what joint it may be, muscles on both sides of the joints try to fire in a balanced sequential manner. And so if you have muscles, like for example in this picture, the muscles in the upper back that are lengthened out by the sitting posture, sitting that way for hours and hours, weeks, months, lengthened out muscles tend to become weaker. And let's say you look at the muscles in the front of his shoulders, the pectoral muscles. He's constantly typing. Life in general is in front of us, not behind us. So those muscles do tend to get a little bit tighter. Tighter muscles restrict your natural flexibility. So now when you try to move a joint, you're looking at weaker, lengthened out muscles trying to fight shorter muscles that are restricting your range. And the result is pain and dysfunction. So that's with muscles and ligaments, but now we'll take a look at what happens inside our spine. So if you look at our spine, the picture on the left, our spine is a whole set of vertebral bones that are stacked up one on top of the other. And you have a disc, which is pretty much the consistency of jello, kind of sitting like a cushion between each and every one of them. This is a picture of a lumbar spine, but essentially the mechanics is the same with the neck as well. So if you were to look at your little jello disc from the side, as you can see in figure 1, and imagine yourself bending forward, the jello is squeezed small in the front and the back wall has to expand and is under tension when you bend forward. When you stand back up straight, that evens out. So now imagine sitting for 4 hours to work. The front of your jello or the disc is really squeezed small and the back wall is under a high amount of tension. And there's only so long and so many hours and so many weeks of that back wall being under tension before it starts to give and it starts to change shape. Some of you may have heard the term a disc bulge. So the disc bulge is nothing but the back wall, the posterior wall of this disc sort of starting to deform and go out of shape. When that happens, there's a lot of pain-sensitive structures that surround it. So when it bulges and goes out of shape and irritates those pain-sensitive structures, you start to have neck pain, you start to have back pain. The more the bulge, the further down the arm or the leg your pain starts to go. So if you look at the figure 2B over there, that shows you an example of where that outer wall of your jello or the disc has actually broken through and the softer inner nucleus has actually migrated out and it's actually touching the nerve root. When something actually squeezes your nerve root, you're going to have tingling, numbness, and occasionally some weakness. So now that we know what's happening with the muscles and ligaments, what's happening inside the disc and how the mechanics of the disc works, we can look at how we can sit with ideal posture. So this is an example of good sitting posture. There's a few things you want to think about and keep in mind. Think of it as starting from my eyes and going all the way down to my ankles. So you want your eyes to be level with the top of your computer screen. Why? Because when it is level with that, you're going to protect your neck and prevent yourself from looking down, thereby maintaining the normal C curve of your neck, and your neck is protected. The second thing to remember is to not let the arms, the weight of the arms, dangle off of your shoulders and your neck. And how do we do that? We do that by making sure that the elbows and the forearm are supported by the armrest of the chair that you pick and also by part of the table. So as a rule, when you're setting up your chair, remember the arm has to be more or less vertical. The forearm has to be more or less horizontal or parallel to the floor. If your forearm, which is elbow down to the fingertips, is up higher, your wrists have to bend in order to be able to reach your keyboard and type. If your arms are really low, again, your wrists have to come up to be able to reach the keyboard and type. And in both cases, you're compressing and stretching nerve tissue, which is right at the wrist. When I said your arms shouldn't dangle, the reason for that is that the weight of the arms is transferred to the muscles of the shoulder blade and the neck, your scapular muscles. So with hours and hours of the working with your arms not supported, those are going to fatigue. The loads then get transmitted directly more to your discs in your spine when muscles give out. As far as the mid-back and the low back goes, you want to make sure that your chair has enough padding or is cushioned well enough to support the mid-back as well as the low back, not one or the other. So one thing to remember here is when you set up your chair, and most people have ergonomic chairs, you don't want your chair to be a very tight 90 degree, because when you sit on a chair that's absolutely set up at 90, when you sit in it and you place your hands on the table, our center of, your center of gravity tends to tip forward a little bit. And with, having to type in front of you, it's very likely that your back is going to go off the backrest. So having the chair tip ever so slightly back is probably going to let you sit in more of a comfortable upright position. I would certainly recommend that you tighten up the adjustment of the backrest. A lot of chairs will just let you rock back and forth. You don't want to do that. That basically means your muscles have to be switched on at all times to do the work. They're going to fatigue. So coming to hip, knee, and ankle. The rule of thumb when you want to sit right is never let your knees go above the level of your hip. Why? When the knees go above the level of your hip, automatically the lordosis, or the C curve of your back, starts to flatten out. You're going to start to put pressure on your discs when that happens. Ideal is for the knee to be ever so slightly below the hip, so your hip is also relaxed. As far as the ankle goes, make sure that your ankle is also, like you can see in this picture, it's ever so slightly in front of the knee. We have a lot of soft tissue, delicate soft tissue behind our knee. You have a nerve, major veins, arteries. So sort of sitting with your feet tucked under your chair or sitting in a very tight 90 is also going to cause compression because you're sitting like that for a few hours on a daily basis. I think that having a nice footrest to let the feet slide up in front of you is a better idea. Couple of thoughts about the kind of table you want to choose and the way you want to adjust your chair. When you pick a table that you want to work with at home, especially if you are planning on buying one, try and avoid buying one that actually has drawers underneath. So when you sit and when you adjust your chair the right way, where you can actually have your forearms sort of horizontal, you're going to find that generally there's very little room between the undersurface of your table and the top of your thigh. So if you have something that already has drawers in it, it's just not going to let you sit in a very ideal position. Also, when let's say you've got a new chair and you're trying to adjust the chair, all of us instinctively try and adjust the seat height so our feet touch the floor. So try and avoid that. Resist that desire to get the feet correct. Instead, adjust your seat height so you actually find yourself with that forearm resting horizontally or parallel to the floor, sort of resting comfortably on the table. The feet can always be adjusted with the right kind of a footrest. You don't want the feet on the floor, but now your arms are up here for you to type, or they're too low. So seat height adjustment is based on comfort of the arm and the forearm. Okay, so with having seen that and having described all that, the next thing that I'd like to talk about is the concept of standing to work. So recently, this has become such a popular concept, and I think there's a ton of merit to it too. I do recommend to my patients who are sitting all day that try and see if you can sit 30 minutes, stand 30 minutes, and go back and forth like that. And I also tell people the moment you are in a conference call that doesn't warrant having to look at the screen all the time, try and get those earphones on and pace up and down, stand, do whatever else. Give your body an option to move around. So the picture on the left is kind of what I wanted to draw your attention to. That certainly, that's a Vari desk, or they're called stand-up desks. Vari desk sort of sat in my head because Vari is short for variable, and that makes it easy. But if that is a brand, certainly not endorsing anybody, stand-up desk is what you want to look for. So this is something that you can actually put on a desk. I like it because it's got the two-tier, and so you have more opportunity to have your forearms rested and your eyes can still be level with the computer monitor. So it is a little bit larger, but it kind of really gives you the optimal position. Alternately, I've had patients tell me that they have put their laptop up on a stack of books or something like that and gotten a wireless keyboard, and they've sort of just switched it around and done it that way, and that also works. When I looked online and I was looking for a Vari Desk for my son, I found everything from $35 to $45 ones to ones that run into several $100s. And I remember a friend of mine saying that he was going to get a motorized one that was coming close to $1,000. So there's a huge variety out there. When you do buy something, especially if you're going to buy one that actually can be put on top of your desk and taken up and down, I would say look at all the pictures the company offers, look at the videos if there are any. They all seem to throw some videos of how their product works, because when the product fully collapses on your table, on your regular table, sometimes it's thick enough that it's still 2 inches off the actual surface, and now you still might end up with a flexed wrist. So you want something that has a very thin panel that when it settles down is really, really almost flush, flush with your table. So it's not uncomfortable on your wrist to have something sitting on your table. So this is as far as variable or stand-up desks. Other things that can help. A lumbar roll. This is one of my favorite products to recommend to any of my patients who get uncomfortable with sitting. I like the full roll, that's a full circle. Mesh supports are also great. Some people say they love it. You can also see the top right picture is kind of like a semicircle kind of cushion. All of us have such different bodies where none of us are built alike. So I think sometimes it's a little bit of a what works for me, but I think you can't go wrong if you have something that's completely round. Sometimes you can also play with things you have at home. Initially, I tell people to start off with just take a towel, make a nice roll with it. Just make sure it's at least 6 to 8 inches thick. And then you can just put a couple of rolls of duct tape on it and then try it behind you. Leave one in the car if you like it. When you put it behind you, you have, sort of get close to where your belt would be, adjust it, take it up, take it down, and find that perfect spot of comfort for you. I like that these have a belt that can go around your chair. So once you find that comfort spot and you put that belt, it stays there no matter how many times you get up and move. It's right where you want it to be when you come back. Next, we have a few more things like a raised chair cushion. Now, this is something that is important for people who have shorter torsos. So, we're all built differently. Some people have shorter trunks and longer legs. Or secondly, children. This is where I think the products get a little more useful for kids. Kids inherently will have shorter torsos. And so you'll find a lot of kids, when they sit on the regular dining table chair to do their homework, their arms are like this because they're just not tall enough to rest their forearms on their table. So raised chair cushions of different kinds help both these categories, especially if you don't necessarily have an ergonomic chair that will adjust. Footrests also are an excellent product to have. I like footrests that move a little bit. It gives you an option to get some movement and pump your ankles. I think kids like that a little bit too. But you also get just simple, sturdy ones. For kids, I also saw ones that actually have adjustable knobs where you can just snap them up. And so you can actually go up several inches depending on how short or tall the child may be when they're sitting at a dining table. A little something for the shoulders and arms. So a lot of people find it annoying if they have smaller laptops, they have to sort of squeeze their shoulders in to type on a tinier keyboard. So the keyboard that you have on the left is sort of lets you rest your arms in a more comfortable, natural position, which is a little more rounded. And so then you can type that way instead of being in like this. The mouse that you see there, the ergonomic mouse, is, I know, definitely recommended also by our occupational therapists for, especially to patients who have carpal tunnel syndrome And also for people who have to do a lot of clicking on their keyboard. If you're doing click, 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 click all day, so you're doing a lot of this motion with your wrist, and after a while that can also get a little fatiguing. So this mouse, most of the clicking is happening with the thumb, and the other two fingers can kind of move your cursor through the screen. So it definitely reduces the amount of wrist back and forth that you're doing. The picture of the wrist or the forearm support for your mouse pad, I threw in there just to sort of, there is that option to tell you that you can actually use something that sort of supports not does not support you at the wrist, but really a little bit below the wrist, pretty much at the forearm. You do get longer ones that can kind of support both forearms, so you can use it at your keyboard as well. The important thing to remember is don't put it right here. Don't put it right under the wrist. That will start to irritate your nose, and you don't want to end up with tingling in your hand. And then coming to kids. So like I said before, kids have shorter torsos, and most tables, islands, kitchen islands at home where they're going to be studying right now are not necessarily built for that height. So that raised chair cushion, taller chairs that you may have generally used for your kitchen island, stuff like that is easier for them. This I just Googled adjustable footrest for children. And this was a great example that came up. And I put it there just to show you that it doesn't have to be something fancy and adjustable. It may just be something you can even make at home. And depending on how long your son or daughter's leg is and how far it is from the floor. So this one goes almost a foot high for kids who are really younger. So it's totally worth investing in a little bit of that, because kids will do this all day and they will not complain until they really start to feel uncomfortable. So this is a little something for children. Now we'll come to, despite doing all this, it is very natural for our body to dislike being in static positions. When we're sitting, not moving, we have our metabolism's going. So we have metabolic byproducts that are constantly being pumped out by our soft tissue. And when they sort of accumulate, stagnate, blood flow is kind of slow because we're not moving, you start to get, you just feel uncomfortable. You want to move out of there. You want to stretch a little bit. So here are some simple ideas for you to get a little bit of a stretch going. So since, like I said before, we as human beings, we are notorious for a forward chin posture. Life is in front of us, so we're always reaching out that way. So the first exercise is where you're simply tucking your chin in to realign your neck. Second is where you're stretching your upper trapezius. A lot of patients tell me, I hold my stress here, I hold my tension here. This feels like a rock. And that can happen again if your keyboard's the wrong height and you're sort of shrugging to type. Those are things that will accentuate that tightness sensation you have here. So a nice stretch sideways and a little overpressure, like in this picture from your hand, should help to relax that. Shoulder circles, as you can see in bottom left picture, great way to get those muscles to loosen up after being just stuck in a certain position for a while. Looking up at the ceiling, again, a great realignment exercise. The simple thing I would say is just start with 10 repetitions of everything. You want to spend maybe 1 or 2 minutes every 30 minutes doing something, doing a little stretch here and there to get your muscles more relaxed, more comfortable, just get your circulation going. So I would start with just 10 repetitions, hold the stretch for about 5 seconds. Let's say you like certain stretches, start to do those more often, hold them a little bit longer. You can hold your stretches up to 30 seconds to a minute if you'd like to. No problem with that. And once you get to that point, you can just do 1 or 2 stretches and you should feel a lot better. So that was for the neck. So now, and the same rule holds good for no matter what you're stretching. So coming to the shoulders and upper back. So our pectoral muscles are typically here. From days, weeks, and years of working in front of us do tend to tighten up. Simple ways to stretch them out throughout your day. If you feel like you have the flexibility, grab your hands behind your back, straighten out the elbows, and lift your arms up and away from you. Some people may feel like I can't get my hands together behind me. So then you can use an umbrella, a broom, a cane if you may have at home to grab like you see in the picture on the top right, and then just lift those arms up and away from you. A great stretch for pectoral muscles and your bicep muscles. The other option is to just maybe put your hands on either side of a doorway and then just step forward so you feel that nice stretch, just doing it in a doorway. That also works. The third stretch, bottom left, is just a nice rotational stretch for your entire, your neck, your upper back, and your lower back. So you're getting a little bit of a rotational stretch. And the last one is sort of to help the upper back that has probably been slouching along with the shoulders and the neck. So you want to sort of gently rest your hands behind your neck and sort of hinge on the top of the chair that you have to give that upper back a little stretch in the opposite direction. The next one would be a little bit for the low back and for your legs. So with the first one, that is one of my favorite go-to stretches for people who have to sit for prolonged periods of time. So when you stand, place your hands on your low back. You can also do this against your kitchen island, kitchen counter, dining table, or a taller dining chair if you're taller. Just make sure you don't let your knees bend and you arch back as far as the back will let you go comfortably, and come back and repeat that 5 or 10 times. People who sit a lot for work will start to develop tightness in their hamstrings. Hamstrings are the muscles in the back of the thigh. And typically when those muscles get tight, they tend to rock our pelvis backwards and they don't let your pelvis rock forward as much as you need to. So it tends to predispose the low back to a lot more stress because it's not going to give. So stretching out your hamstring is a number one priority if you're having issues with your back getting a little bit stiff. The next stretch is bottom left is a good calf stretch. If you make sure that you're standing absolutely upright, then you will open up the front of your hip as well, which is also a great stretch because you're constantly sitting and your hip is also flexed. Last one is a good quadricep stretch. The quadricep muscle also crosses the hip. So again, it starts to get tight closer to the hip. So that's a good one to open that up as well. So again, remember, start off with a simple number, maybe 5, 10 repetitions. Hold your stretches for 5 seconds at a time. Do them if they feel good. And just make sure you get up and move and do these, say something, at least every 30 minutes for a minute to 2. Other things you can try and take a timeout from your workstation. I know we never liked it as kids, but I'm sure you won't mind this one. Short walks after lunch. If you get a little quick break, you can jog it out if you want to. A few yoga stretches. Yoga has an extensive collection of stretches in multiple different directions. If you have a history or you're used to yoga, try it out. If you're not comfortable with it, you certainly talk to somebody before you do it. Playing with your kids, they will get you moving in all directions. Bottom line, make it a movement-based workplace. The more you move, the better off your body's going to be. So with that, we are going to start to take a few questions. So the first question is, even if you're doing all these things and you're still having pain, what should you do if you're still experiencing pain? So the first thing I would do is, even after making all of these changes, you still are having problems, you're still having symptoms. I would say number one thing is go see your doctor. Come see any of our orthopedic docs. Get evaluated and see what's going on and how, is there something that needs a closer look? Do you need an x-ray? Do you need maybe a couple of sessions in physical therapy? So if that is the case, I will tell you, if you're somebody who needs physical therapy because you think it has got something to do with the way you're sitting and working, I would definitely recommend that you bring pictures on your phone of where you're working. Have somebody in your family take a picture of you while you're working. So that really makes it much more visual for us, and we can make recommendations of maybe you can add this here or add that there. So it becomes more practical and relevant to your lifestyle. And the exercises that we give you can be a lot more tailor-made to what you need. Next question. Should your feet be flat on the floor when sitting at the desk or raised up on a footstool? So if there's two ways to do it, like I said, one would be if you are able, so let's say that's your knee joint and your feet are right here below, okay, let me do it this way, like where my watch would be. So having your ankle right below your knee is not a problem, but sort of trying to put your feet out a little bit, you will find is a little more comfortable for both your knee and your ankle. A footstool is something I strongly recommend because in an 8-hour sitting day, I think that your knee and your ankle will appreciate having that option to go up on that little footstool and then coming back down and then going back up again later on and coming back down. I think just staying with either or constantly for 8 hours is also going to become a little fatiguing. People who have had knee issues before or have for some reason are also experiencing some knee swelling, knee irritation, the knee typically does not like the whole 90-degree bent position when if it's a little irritated. A little opened up at the knee with the feet out a little bit is ideal. So I would say keep a footstool and then go back and forth, feet on the floor and back up and go back and forth. Can you get a copy of the exercises? I'll let Jen answer that.
Yeah. So everyone who registered for this webinar in 2 or 3 days will get a recorded version emailed to you through a YouTube link. So it'll be very easy to get, will click on the link and the webinar information will be there for you.
Go ahead, Jen.
No, I was just checking to see if there are any more questions. I don't see any more in the Q&A. I'm just checking the chat. No, I think we're good. I think you answered all of the questions that anyone had during the presentation. However, if you do have any further questions that come up that you think of, please feel free to email programs@mbortho.com. Those emails come directly to me, and then I will talk to Prarthana to make sure that whatever answers I'm giving you are in par with what she recommends. So we really do.
Jen, there's just one comment in the chat section that I think it just says, I think Richard says wearing bifocals adds complexity, and the ergo height screen presents issues as well. Richard, truly, I unfortunately I don't wear them, so I mean I can totally understand that being extremely annoying. We have a lot of docs who actually have one of those glasses that actually sort of splits open right in the middle. So I don't know if maybe looking for something like that is worth trying. That was the only thing, Jen. Sorry.
Oh, yes, I just noticed that. Yeah, so if anyone has any further questions, please feel free to email programs@mbortho.com and we'll be sure to get answers to you as quickly as we can. Prarthana, thank you so much. This was such a great presentation. I clearly learned a lot because there are a lot of things that I'm not doing properly. So thank you so much. I think it's a great presentation to give at a time that a lot of people are working or studying from home.
Yes.
So again, thank you everyone for joining us. If you have any questions, again, just feel free to email that email address located on the screen. You will be receiving a recorded version of the webinar in a couple of days. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.